It's the first network interview with Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX. And George, we know that you traveled down to the Bahamas to speak with him.
In that penthouse that he said, and used to work with his former colleagues at FTX, now alone with his parents. And Robin, this was really something, a wild interview. Almost 2 hours we sat down. It felt at times like a therapy session. He took every tough question. He wanted to speak out about all the questions surrounding this collapse. Remember, about a month ago, he was worth about $20 billion. Now he says he's worth $100,000. He's under investigation by prosecutors and regulators, but he insists he did not commit fraud. Let's take a look.
Good.
A lot of people look at you and see Bernie Madoff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's who I am at all, but I understand why they're saying that. People lost money, and people lost a lot of money. And I mean, at the end of the day, look, there's a question of what happened and why, and who did what caused the meltdown. And I think that reads very differently, right? When you look at the classic Bernie Madoff story, there was no real business there. The whole thing, as I understand it, I think was just one big Ponzi scheme, right? FTX, that was a real business.
He was at the top of the cryptocurrency world. 30-year-old billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried.
You just need FTX.
It's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
I don't think so.
Super Bowl ads, naming stadiums, Steph Curry, Gisele Bündchen.
We did a lot of things to try and bolster our reputation, to try and, help our brand.
But in the early morning hours of November 11th, it all came to an end when FTX filed for bankruptcy and Bankman-Fried stepped down as CEO amid reports of FTX customer funds being used to pay Alameda Research creditors. This confirmed by former Alameda CEO Carolyn Ellison during an early November video meeting with employees. Alameda, the crypto trading firm also founded by Bankman-Fried. ABC News reached out to Carolyn Ellison for comment, but has not heard back.
One of the reasons FTX went bankrupt is because FTX deposits were used to pay Alameda's creditors. Carolyn Ellison said you knew about that. Is that true?
Best I can tell, Alameda did have a big position open on FTX. That position, I think, was very over collateralized a year ago. There was a total market collapse, and specifically a large correlated collapse in its assets over the last month, and to some extent over the last year, that threatened that position quite a bit. And I think that's, as best I understand, a lot of what happened there.
I am no cryptocurrency expert, I'm no finance expert, but I don't think you answered my question. I was asking, did you know that FTX deposits were used to pay off Alameda creditors?
I don't know of FTX deposits being used to pay off Alameda creditors. Are you, which creditors are you referring to?
Carolyn Ellison said that you all knew that these funds were put into Alameda. They were the funds owned by your depositors.
So I can't speak for who knew what. A lot of the customers on FTX did have, borrows either, in dollars or Bitcoin or euros.
But as you know, the FTX terms of service tell the people who signed up, none of the digital assets in your account are the property of or shall be or may be loaned to FTX trading. But you're saying that happened.
My understanding is a few things happened. The first is there is a margin trading facility on FTX by which users can lend out funds, by which other users borrow funds. And so there are explicit cases where there is, margin extended, where there is borrow lending.
If Alameda is borrowing the money that belongs to FTX depositors, that's a bright red line, isn't it?
There are a lot of cases where that's actually explicitly part of the programs and that are
but
happening.
Not here. Here it says that the digital assets may not be loaned to FTX trading. They can't be loaned out.
There existed a borrow lending facility on FTX. And I think that's probably covered, I don't remember exactly where, but somewhere else in the terms of service.
But they'd have to approve of that. They're saying they didn't approve of it here. They're saying you approved of it.
If you rewind to the beginning of FTX, where some customers were I think in line with sort of existing relationships that they've had, at least in some cases, wiring money straight to Alameda Research in order to trade on FTX.
So you do know, and you did know, that FTX deposits were being funneled to Alameda.
So I was vaguely aware that that was how some wires were being sent in the first place.
Didn't that set off alarm bells in your head?
So there were a lot of people who were involved in that process. And look, I really deeply wish that I had taken like a lot more responsibility for understanding what the details were of what was going on there. I knew that legal was involved. I knew that other groups at the company were involved, that there were agreements drafted up.
But you're ultimately responsible.
And ultimately, absolutely, I should have been on top of this, and I feel really, really bad and regretful that I wasn't. And a lot of people got hurt, and that's on me.
Here's what Mark Cuban has to say about that.
Yep.
He said, if I were him, I'd be afraid of going to jail for a long time.
At the end of the day, it's not my call what happens, and the world will judge me as it will.
Are you worried about going to jail?
There are a lot of things that are worrying me right now. And, as best as possible, I'm trying to focus on what I can do going forward to be helpful and, let whatever, regulatory and legal processes are happening play out as they will.
I do want to move on, but just finally on this. This is really a yes or no question.
Yep.
Carolyn Ellison says you knew that FTX funds were being funneled to Alameda. Did you know that?
I knew that there is an open margin position there and that involved
I know, but that's not what I'm
dollar.
asking. If she's in court and you're in court and she's under oath and you're under oath and you're asked, did you know that these funds were being funneled to Alameda, what is your answer?
I did not know that there is any improper use of customer funds.
You also took out a $1 billion loan. What was that for?
That was generally for reinvesting in the company. That was not for, consumption. To my knowledge, I have basically nothing left. Basically everything I had was invested in the business. I expect I'm gonna have nothing at the end of this. I think I had $100,000 left in my bank account last I checked, and I think I have, one credit card working with that right now.
Earlier this summer, you thought you had, what, 32 billion?
Probably 20, but a whole lot more than I do now.
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah, it's been a really humbling fall in a lot of ways.
How do you explain the failure? Was it inattention, arrogance?
It's a good question.
Was it unethical?
Some part of it was just literal distraction. I really should have spent some time each day taking a step back and saying, what are the most important things here, right? And how do I have oversight of those and make sure that I'm not losing track of those? And frankly, I did a pretty incomplete job at that. I spent a lot less time looking at assets and looking at balances and positions because that's not where revenue came from. And so I wasn't seeing it as a core business driver. Obviously, it was a core risk, and that was a huge mistake of mine to not think more about that.
You said one of your great talents in a podcast was managing risk.
That's right. And
well, it's obviously wrong.
Well, I think that there is something maybe even deeper wrong there, which was I wasn't even trying. I wasn't spending any time or effort trying to manage risk on FTX. And that obviously
that's a stunning admission.
What?
That's a pretty stunning admission.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. What happened. And if I had been spending an hour a day thinking about risk management on FTX, I don't think that would have happened. I think I stopped working as hard for a bit. Honestly, if I look back on myself, I think I got a little cocky, maybe more than a little bit. And I think part of me felt like we'd made it.
As I said, that was a pretty stunning admission. The whole job of the head of a firm like that is managing risk.
Risk, exactly. And he wanted to, he reached out. He
Desperately.
wanted
He went against the advice of his lawyers. He thanked me at the end. Like I said, we talked for close to 2 hours, and you saw he didn't flinch from the tough questions, but even though he had a hard time at times answering them, and he just wants to speak his mind. Now, one of the reasons he said he wants to speak his mind is he still hopes that in some way he can contribute to the idea of getting some of the depositors' monies back. Now, I asked him, is that delusional?
because that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and he has no role in FTX right now, but he is facing several investigations at this point, but he wants to tell his side of the story.
I wonder how the people who lost money will respond to this interview, because clearly he struggled to answer a lot of these key questions.
We will see.
Yeah. All right, George, thanks so much. Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.
Former FTX executive Ryan Salem has now been sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. That term longer than the defense or the prosecution had asked for, and indicates how tough the judge will be toward perhaps other members of Sam Bankman-Fried's inner circle. The sentencing comes as the FTX co-founder himself reportedly awaits transfer to a California facility. William Cohen, founding partner at Puck News, spoke with Bankman-Fried earlier this month. He joins us now, and you spoke to him in prison. And you wrote about that for Puck News. And what's fascinating to me is not just the conversation you had with him, but the whole process is really interesting, Bill. So welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And tell us about that.
Well, you know, it's a beautiful day out here in New York today, and it was that kind of similar day on May 7th. You can only visit on Tuesday, and this is in Brooklyn at the Metropolitan Detention Center, which is in Sunset Park, a part of Brooklyn I'd never been, and not many people really, hang out there. There's two monolithic buildings. Of course, I went to the one, that looked more inviting. That turned out to be, which is sort of where most of the men are kept, but it turns out he was kept with a group of 35 men in the women's side of the prison. So I had to go back over there, but because they're understaffed, they didn't let you in at the appointed hour that they're supposed to let you in, so we all had to sort of wait around. Anyway, I got in there eventually. It was quite a challenge, and then ended up talking to him for about an hour and 15 minutes. He just suddenly, we were in this cafeteria area, which was sort of bright and cheery and welcoming to families. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sam in his chocolate brown jumpsuit, noticed the hair looking much thinner, and sat down and we just talked for an hour and 15 minutes. Couldn't bring in any recording device.
That is rough. And not even a pad and pen, Bill?
No pad and pencil, not a pen, just my brain, which, so I had to focus on what he was saying and focusing on the remembering.
Yeah. And how did he, I'm just curious, but did you get a sense, just how he seemed to you? What was his mood, to the extent that you could kind of read it?
I mean, look, I would have thought that it would be an incredibly depressing experience knowing that you're going to be in a place like this for 25 years unless there's some degree of leniency. I mean, maybe it's obviously early days. He's been there since August. He's only been, convicted since last year, and his sentence was in March. So I actually found him in better spirits than I thought he'd be, quite honestly. He said that he's actually been treated pretty well, which, or at least not badly, because we've all seen the, prison movies. We know sort of the gestalt of prison life. It's probably not something any of us would want to experience, but he seemed, pretty good frame of mind, frankly. I'm a little surprised. He talks to his lawyer and his parents, who were probably also acting as lawyers, former Stanford law professors, for at least an hour a day. He plays video games, watches movies on a tablet that they give him that's not connected to the internet, and he's also sends emails through core links. So I'm sure it's not great. I think I'm sure he feels like he's wasting his mind there, but this is what he's got right now.
Well, his mind right now seems also really focused on an appeal process.
Totally.
So, do you feel like, Bill, is he in denial. Does he strike you as a person in denial? I mean, the whole world has a certain perception of this guy, I think fair to say, or most of the world. And he pretty steadfastly has said, like, he didn't mess up.
Yeah, I mean, actually at one point I said to him, do you feel finally like you were being punished for something that you did wrong, and maybe the sentence was too long or was unfair, but you really did feel like you did something wrong and you're willing to admit that, and now you're getting punished for it? Or do you feel like you're in here unfairly and you're being punished for something you didn't do? Quelle surprise. I think it was the latter. He still maintains his innocence, that he did nothing wrong.
So no real sense of remorse there, Bill?
No, I have to say. Yeah. I mean, he's not adamant about it. He's not like pounding the table. He's not, emotional about it, because I don't think that's his nature. But he definitely feels like he did nothing wrong. And
well, that's been the argument, right? I sort of like, I made a mistake, but it wasn't.
It wasn't criminal.
Right.
It wasn't gross negligent. It wasn't negligent. It was if they had just let me, and he blames Sullivan and Cromwell, of course, and if they had just let me, continue raising the money that I was trying to raise when we had the liquidity crunch, it all would have worked out fine. You can see now everybody's getting their money back. The investments that I made were actually fine. It was just a time period where they just went to town on me and tried to, the perception was the boat was sinking, every man for himself. And who gets thrown off the boat or puts in irons first is the the CEO. And I think that's what he thinks happened to him. Yeah. Everybody else got to cut a deal, including Ryan, including everybody else that reported to him. S&C, he claims went to the Southern District of New York and sort of reported on him, and in an effort potentially to save themselves and keep them out of any potential litigation. So I think he felt like he was quite lonely, and that they were gunning for him and wanted to make an example of him.
I want to switch gears to another thing that you've been writing a lot about recently. Maybe on the subject of self-delusion, maybe not, I don't know. Media executives. You have been looking into that world a lot, and there's obviously a lot of action there with Paramount still being in place somehow, and some of the troubles at some of the other media companies. What's kind of your big takeaway as the landscape right now? And how you always, one of your real talents, Bill, is you have like an ear for these types of executives or these characters, right?
Well, I'm very character-driven kind of writer, so I love it when I find a great character. Yeah,
so how are these characters in media feeling right now and facing these challenges?
I mean, I think that we've got, that's a big media, let's call it, not as opposed to like the tech media.
Right.
Big media, I think, is in disarray right now. Whether it's Disney or Warner Brothers or Paramount or, with the exception of, say, Netflix, which I guess is tech media, but
that's the one everybody else seems to be still trying to chase.
If they can, but I mean, their business model is like completely different. They don't have any of the legacy problems. I mean, as a former M&A guy, to watch, and I worked on, by the way, the original Viacom acquisition of Paramount back many years ago when I was at Lazard, and so to see this M&A process drag out so long and so publicly and so foolishly, it's just an amazing situation to me. I mean, you could ask yourself, why in the media are we so fixated on the Paramount story? It's just because I think, what Sumner Redstone built, and then what Sherry took over, and now what she's finally made the decision to sell, it's obviously the wrong time, the wrong moment. She can't find the right buyers, even though there's been some creativity. I mean, I give, the Ellison crew credit for creativity, and Sony Apollo, probably there's plenty of good ideas coming out of them, but Sherry can just say no whenever she wants to, and nobody can do a darn thing about it. And everybody knew that they couldn't do a darn thing about it because she is the controlling shareholder with the voting stock. So, and meanwhile, the stock continues to tick down. It's just a sorry situation. And people like, Mario Gabelli, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking owning that stock for decades now. He's not going to kind of get the payday that he wanted. And he's a smart guy. So to me, it's fascinating, really is.
Even if there was a deal, Bill, what's your sense of what they could do with Paramount that maybe Paramount couldn't just do on its own at this point?
Yeah, well, obviously, the Ellison crowd has a lot of interesting ideas, and they're going to bring in a whole new management team, and focus on the studio, marrying it with Ellison's studio. Sony and Apollo, who obviously is the owner of this
Yes, indeed.
network. I think they have a lot of my sense is a lot of interesting and creative ideas. It's probably more of the, cut and peel off assets strategy and, really reshape the business. With the Ellison deal, that would remain, Paramount would remain a public company. So, investors who obviously won't get the kind of payout that Sherry will get if that deal will happen, will have the opportunity to participate if, David Ellison and company are able to, turn that company around. But it's so small on a relative basis.
Yeah.
I mean, Comcast is 250 billion market cap. Disney's about that. I mean, Netflix is 400. I mean, this is what, 10 billion?
But it's drama, Bill.
Oh, it's great.
It's drama.
It's great drama.
Succession's over. We need something to watch.
We love the drama.
So there we
No doubt
go.
about it.
Becoming
Good to see
part
you. Thanks
of
for coming in.
the
Appreciate
mainstream
it.
political.
In Washington. Part one was to buy and influence as many elected officials as possible to get the most favorable legislation possible, which is to say the weakest possible legislation. And the other track was to get the CFTC to approve this application.
One of their talking points is that they are so different, they are so innovative, that they basically need bespoke regulation. Once you start to dig into the technology, the types of trading, the way the companies are set up, it looks very similar to other companies. So I've said, why would we stray from what we know works?
A couple of weeks before the meeting with us, I got a phone call that they were floating $1 million or more if we would support their application at the CFTC. Why do you think they spent hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing over the last couple of years? Why did they buy the Super Bowl ad? Why are they putting their names on Major League Baseball umpires' uniforms? They wanted retail America to be thinking FTX, legitimate, real, good place to do business. That was all priming the pump for the app that was going to go live the second the application got approved. The app goes live, boom, millions of retail customers for FTX sending tens of millions of dollars into FTX.
CZ Changpeng Zhao is his name. CZ is the founder and CEO of Binance, which is the world's largest and most liquid cryptocurrency exchange.
Bitcoin cryptocurrencies back in 2013, 2014, for me, was one of those really unique opportunities where it was early stage. Only a small number of people got it, and it's going to be a huge future. So I told myself I'm not going to miss it. That was an opportunity of a lifetime.
CZ is a Chinese-Canadian entrepreneur. He's been in crypto for a really long time. He was also an investor in FTX. I think he saw them less as a competitor and more as there's room for more than one major exchange.
Binance was way bigger than FTX, but FTX was like the main competitor of Binance. These were the sort of two heavyweights in the world of crypto. And Binance was this like hyper aggressive exchange, founded in China, And the founder of Binance, CZ, is this really incredibly like pro-crypto billionaire guy. And Sam kind of set himself up as a foil to that. Sam was an American. Sam was giving money to American politicians. He was like the good guy to CZ's bad guy, right? That's kind of how it was processed at the time. I was trying to profile CZ. He lives in Dubai. Dubai, not everybody likes it, right? But it's sort of an interesting place. It's this international city of really tall buildings and so on. And I'm asking him, maybe CZ could, tell me what he likes about Dubai, or show me around, give me the tour of the city. This is his new home. He's so happy to be here. And the only thing CZ wanted to do was talk about his minivan. It's the kind of thing that you would use like for a VIP convoy. And he had bought this minivan because it had the same kind of seats that you have like on a first-class airplane cabin, right? And he showed me, we're in the van, and there's like a couple of assistants in the back, and CZ shows me how you can lower the seat. And he told me that, he got this van because it was the only one where you could lower the seat all the way. And he starts lowering the seat, he presses the button, and it's like, zzz, and it like hits the knees of the guy behind us who's taking notes, and the guy sort of says, and then CZ, turns it around, pops it up. But I thought it was pretty funny because like, he's so comfortable on the go, international travel, that he's trying to like replicate that even in his home. My understanding of Sam's plan was that, he's operating this kind of offshore casino, and he would like the US government to give him a casino license. At some point, regulators are going to accept this, and one of us is going to be the big winner. And Sam was trying to make that happen in the United States, which, of course, if you're legal in the United States, like the United States is like the locus of the global financial system. And I think CZ perceived that as a threat.
When we optimize our energy, so it's much better for me to sit here and speak to all of you than looking at what FTX does or trying to take market share away from them. For them, they may think it's meaningful to take market share away from us, but that's actually also a very, what do they call it, limited mindset. They should try to grow the industry and not lobby against other players.
I don't think what FTX was doing was trying to kill their competitors. They were literally just trying to find a way to safely operate in the United States. And that is actually something every exchange was and is doing. They just want to make sure that they could have American investors in a way that's legal so they aren't sued, within an inch of their life.
Whoever wins this market, whoever's first to market, is going to have a huge advantage. But also there's this like political thing going on where FTX presents itself as the like American champion and gets the US government to keep Binance at arm's length for political reasons.
FTX has this token called FTT. This is typical for crypto projects and companies to have their own affiliated token.
So the FTT token is basically a token which gives you certain benefits on the exchange if you hold it.
One of the strategies that FTX used and Binance still uses is, let's issue a token for the exchange. The more you own, the less you pay for trading fees.
In crypto, people often think of tokens as being something like airline miles, where if you use the product, you get rewarded in them, or when you have the things, you can use them to pay for the product. So the value of that depends on how much you want to use FTX as an exchange. But the main thing that the token does is like, it trades. And if people think the exchange is good, then they might buy the token of that exchange as a way to bet on that exchange. And so if you're an exchange, you love issuing those tokens because they're free to you, essentially.
Let's say that I create a coin. I'm gonna call it Zcacoin. All right, like now there's 1 billion Zcacoins, I just did it. I just need to sell one of them to somebody. It could be like my buddy for $1. And then the cost, $1 times the supply, 1 billion, makes me a billionaire based on the market value. And then I can go to like banks and say, hey, I'm a billionaire, will you give me a loan?
But is it really worth that much? I mean, it's kind of funny money in that way.
The problem, however, is that the FTT token is not like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where the supply of the currency is totally fixed. With the FTT token, they were able to mint themselves an absurd amount of tokens out of thin air, and they were able to change the supply of the tokens over time.
To me, I always thought the main aspect of like a token like FTT is that FTX promised to use a portion of its trading revenues to buy back FTT tokens.
And I think FTX said that they were going to use a third of the revenue and put that toward buying back the FTT tokens. So people expected the exchange to generate a lot of revenue and have their tokens bought back later.
You guys were like one of the biggest, most respected funds in crypto.
And they were known as these brilliant traders who could do no wrong.
This was an event where $60 billion of market cap, 2 top 10 coins, were vaporized in a period of days.
It was a very rapid collapse for us, and it was something that we didn't really quite see coming. After the Luna collapse, there were a lot of issues with liquidity in the entire credit markets. So a lot of firms that lent to us to do this kind of trades, they started to try to recall capital.
They owed people a lot of money, and they didn't have the money to pay it back.
Once Terra Luna blew up and Three Arrows failed, all the people that had lent out money to crypto funds were like, hey, do we lend money to like any other people who are broke now? Maybe we should ask everyone to send the money back just to like check that they still have it. And then maybe we'll lend it out again afterwards. Among the funds that had their loans called in was Alameda. So these like unrelated lenders, other companies were like, Alameda owed them several $1 billion. And even though Alameda had not failed, the lenders were like, hey, just like to check, why don't you send us that money back? Let's just make sure you can. So Alameda had to pay back like billions of dollars in loans after the Terra Luna collapse. It didn't have the money. So that was when, according to some of the other FTX executives, Caroline, Sam, Nishad, and Gary had a meeting and were like, what should we do? We were being asked to send billions of dollars back to lenders. And there were two choices. Alameda could go bankrupt, or they could dip into the FTX customer funds to pay back these loans. And decided, like, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's borrow the money from the customer funds. We'll make it back later. I spoke with Sam about this, and I was kind of surprised because I thought he would deny that such a meeting had even taken place. But he acknowledged that there had been this meeting, but he said to me that it just had seemed very important to him at the time. And that's where you get into a whole explanation about how Alameda was already borrowing money.
Basically, Alameda was borrowing money from FTX and posting as collateral FTT tokens.
So Sam's floundering, like Alameda is struggling now, and Sam's fame, increases. Like, he goes out and puts on this front that he's gonna save the industry.
Crypto FTX signed an agreement with BlockFi today. The deal includes an option to purchase the crypto lender for as much as $240 million.
Increasingly in the crypto community, you're being known as a white knight. Anthony Scaramucci even told us he thinks of you as the JP Morgan of the industry. Obviously, there's a lot of turmoil going on right now.
I think this is less thinking about what do we need here, and this is more, identifying potential opportunities, if there are any, for us to grow, further and faster than we would by default.
This narrative started of Sam Bankman-Fried being the JP Morgan of crypto.
He's on one hand being pressed by regulators, pressed by the kind of like conditions of the market. And on the other hand, rather than kind of like basically going into survival mode, he is attempting to somehow like soar above it.
You begin to see people in the Sam Bankman-Fried empire begin to step away. Brett Harrison, who was the CEO of FTX US, leaves.
Let's just start on the news of the day and the departure of Brett Harrison. What exactly is going on? How long has this been in the works, and where does it leave FTX US?
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that, would go public were it not to have been, in the works for a little while.
Sam Trabucco, the co-CEO of Alameda, also leaves. He said something along the lines of like, I just want to ride my boat fast over nice water.
One thing that I definitely learned was how to manage a team. I knew how to manage a team when everyone was happy, but I had no idea how to manage a team when there was stress, when people were unhappy with each other, when there was conflict. I, was presented with times when, members of our team disagreed with each other, disagreed with me especially, and I didn't know what to do when people couldn't reconcile.
In the beginning, the level of cooperation between even competitors like CZ and Sam, it was very much cooperation because they were starting in nascent industry. They were the co-founders, so to speak. They were the two behemoths. Sam wasn't thinking through what would happen if he sold 20% to CZ, but that's basically what he did.
I think it's totally possible that CZ invested in Sam from the start because he perceived him to be a competitor and because having an interest in a competitor would be a good idea. And also he was able to use that to slow certain aspects of Sam's plan down.
That investment was really a poison pill. Binance, being a competitor, I think knew that by acquiring a 20% stake, they could effectively block the progress of FTX anytime they wanted to.
So he's telling me this story. He starts trying to get licenses to operate in multiple countries in Europe and North America. And they ask, okay, who's on the company? Who owns it? CZ's 20%. So he has to disclose everything about who he is, where he has his assets. So he calls CZ and say, hey, look, we're trying to get this application. You got to disclose. And he'd say, no, I'm not disclosing. He said, why? Now, I don't know what CZ was doing here. Nobody does, only CZ does. But he just refused to comply. So he's probably talking to his management, and I'm now speculating, but I think it's probably went down this way. What do we do with the CZ guy? He's just not gonna play ball with us. He's a huge shareholder. Somebody probably said, Sam, you gotta buy him out. You gotta get rid of him.
It seems like CZ leveraged that for a buyout of his position, with like a 20x return on his investment.
That deal went down for $2.1 billion. Nobody knew. And I only found out a few weeks ago because when Sam told me that, I said, wait a second. You gave all your assets to CZ? How much of it was cash? Like, you stripped the balance sheet of cash to buy this guy out because he was playing hardball with you and not being compliant with regulators? Was that planned? Like, ¿qué pasa, hombre? What is that? Of that 2.1 billion, it sounds like the majority was cash, but 550 million of it was FTT tokens.
A story comes out in CoinDesk about Alameda's balance sheet. And the story has to do with FTX's native token and how Alameda has a lot of that on its balance sheet.
Over the weekend, speculation rose about the solvency of FTX. This came after a CoinDesk report revealed Alameda Research's balance sheet is full of FTX's native token, FTT.
So that story comes out, and then the next beat is that CZ at the exchange Binance tweets that because of what's come to light, he's looking to sell a ton of FTT.
Binance CEO Changpeng CZ Zhao, a sizable owner of the FTT token, saying his exchange would begin liquidating any remaining FTT it had held on its books.
Suddenly, this CoinDesk report, right, which we don't know where it came from, obviously could have been leaked by a competitor. It could be not credible, but now we're seeing a guy who's an investor in FTX, who has a close relationship with Sam Bankman-Fried, who's saying, yep, there's something here, and I'm gonna get out of it.
And as people lose faith in the exchange, there's like a bank run where people are trying to withdraw assets. So many people are withdrawing that they actually stop people's ability to even withdraw their assets. That makes the panic spread even more, wondering, does FTX even have enough money to give me back what is rightfully mine?
The value of Alameda's stash of these tokens was hundreds of millions of dollars, but they went around saying, look at our balance sheet, it's so good. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of these tokens, and no one wanted to pay that kind of money for them.
Crypto exchange Binance announced a deal to buy rival FTX.com. Glenn Goodman, eToro crypto consultant, joins us now to walk us through this. Glenn, I just want to make sure that I've got my head around this correctly. We see Binance selling FTX's tokens after a report last week questioning the credibility of the business. That then causes a liquidity story, which is then resolved by Binance stepping in and buying FTX.com. Have I got that straight? And if so, this feels like the Wild West.
Yeah, you pretty much got that right. And it could be either a masterful chess move, like one of the best business chess moves I've ever seen by Changpeng Zhao, the boss of Binance, or he just got himself into this position kind of by accident and then is now benefiting from it.
Binance, as Binance goes in and gets a closer look at FTX, and the hole in FTX's balance sheet is so enormous that CZ backs out of this deal within 24 hours.
Things really took a turn for FTX after a deal to sell the exchange to its top rival went south.
Sam Bankman-Fried again pounding the pavement, asking for money to keep FTX afloat after Binance called off the deal to buy it. Only this time, everyone has a much better sense of just how bad things are.
I sat down with Binance's chief strategy officer here in Chicago. He essentially said he was shocked at what they saw when they went through FTX's numbers.
Bankman-Fried told investors that the company is facing a liquidity shortfall of around $8 billion.
A lot of traditional finance observers look at this situation had been saying that Sam is insolvent for months, right? Just judging by the actions, but the crypto industry itself was unable to kind of take that in properly, and instead it was just like, it's probably fine. He's the JP Morgan of crypto.
My guess would be that CZ saw this as a great opportunity, right? He says, I'm gonna sell all this, I'm gonna collapse your coin, I'm gonna make you probably a little insolvent and you're not going to be able to handle your customer withdrawals anymore. Now I can buy you and I'm done with you forever. We know that after he did this though, that he saw the books and was like, oh my God, there's an enormous $8 billion hole here. I am not going to purchase this entity at all.
So you strip the guy's balance sheet of all his cash, you wait till there's a question about liquidity, and you hit him with the $550 million. Poof, he's gone. Brilliant, 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 brilliant.
Tonight, the cryptocurrency world is reeling after the meltdown of one of its most popular trading platforms. The exchange, FTX, filed for bankruptcy protection today as fallen crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried stepped down as CEO.
From a $32 billion company to bankruptcy in the matter of just 4 days or so. This bankruptcy filing includes Bankman-Fried's quant trading firm Alameda Research and 134 affiliated companies all over the world. You've got places like Nigeria and Uganda, South Africa.
I mean, all is fair in love and war. That was a masterful move.
I think there will be people that blame Binance for taking down FTX, right? I think it's all kind of nonsense because I think even at the point that CZ did that tweet, Sam could have still halted his exchange and restructured.
Sam tweeted, "At some point I might have more to say about a particular sparring partner, so to speak, but you know, glass houses. So for now, all I say is, well played, you won." Can you respond to that?
I think only a psychopath can write that tweet.
So basically within the span of like a week, people's entire notion and entire understanding of who SBF is has completely flipped. Sam has basically become a villain in everyone's minds. He was supposed to be a responsible guy bailing people out and he needs a bailout? Like, who is this person?
I also don't think he's the complete and utter supervillain that he's been made out to be in some publications and in some groups on Twitter, obviously.
These are people specifically who are on what we call crypto Twitter. It's not a real place, but it's kind of the place on Twitter where people congregate, they're into crypto. And what we've seen is 96% of those people believe SBF is a bad person, he needs to be held accountable, and he doesn't deserve a second chance in crypto.
It just seemed like he was trying to do good to gain people's trust, and there was not really authenticity. Always talking about like he wanted to give everything away, and he just wanted to take care of people, and then he drove like a Corolla, but he's worth like $10 billion. Like there's a narrative he's telling with that, right? And it just wasn't believable, you can tell.
After the bankruptcy, people kind of expect Sam to go off the grid. He's probably gonna not wanna talk to anyone until he figures this all out with his lawyers. But what he does is completely the opposite of what you would expect.
It's fucking ridiculous. I mean, look, I fucked up a lot of things. Like, I just absolutely did, and I deserve a lot of shit for that. I should have been on top of this, and I feel really, really bad and regretful that I wasn't, and a lot of people got hurt, and that's on me.
He starts to do this round of like interviews with absolutely every media outlet under the sun, giving his version of what happened.
There were oversight failures, transparency failures, reporting, like so many things we should have had in place.
There was this moment for a month, right? He's in the penthouse, his world has gotten very small, and he's like doing all these interviews where he's apologizing, seems completely divorced from his own reality. And I think, like, how did that happen? Like, why did he process it in such a weird way? It's because I think for a long time everything had been like an abstraction.
There is no world in which Sam's advisors, the people managing his crisis, told him to go talk more. He seems to think since he talked his way into all this wealth that he can talk his way out of it. And in fact, he just kept making things worse.
What are your lawyers telling you right now? Are they suggesting this is a good idea for you to be speaking?
No, they are very much not. And I think I have a duty to talk to people. I have a duty to explain what happened.
And he was not telling people what happened, and he came across as unlikable, smug. He certainly showed regret, but not remorse.
I mean, it doesn't feel good right now.
His lawyers definitely did not want him speaking.
They said after that was, Sam, we have only one thing to tell you. You have to promise that you never, ever, ever say you fucked up again. I told them to go fuck themselves. I don't think they know what they're talking. I mean, whatever. They know what they're talking about in an extremely narrow domain of litigation. They don't understand the broader context of the world.
One thing that Sam was great at is like getting a listener to the point where like their eyes are glazing over and they stop listening. You would come away like, like, did I really get a response to what I just asked him?
I am no cryptocurrency expert, I'm no finance expert, but I don't think you answered my question. I was asking, did you know that FTX deposits were used to pay off Alameda creditors?
There was like a Spaces on Twitter, and I was one of maybe 6 people who was invited to ask SBF some questions.
You described that these customer funds were being sent to Alameda Research. Can you help me understand how that's not wire fraud?
Sorry, to be clear, and I'm done answering questions from you after this. This is not a constructive approach, but I will answer.
None of it has been. None of it has been, Sam. You don't answer questions.
I understand, so I'm going to answer this question.
No, you're not.
All right, I won't if you don't want me to.
I listened to the rest of the questions, and he got arrested 5 hours later.
Samuel Bankman-Fried, the former CEO of the now bankrupt cryptocurrency exchange FTX, was arrested in the Bahamas today.
This morning, we unsealed an 8-count indictment charging Samuel Bankman-Fried with a series of interrelated fraud schemes that contributed to FTX's collapse. We obtained a warrant for his arrest, and that arrest was executed yesterday in the Bahamas.
Everyone was waiting for when charges would finally drop against SBF. And when the charges do come, they're numerous and kind of shocking. He was charged with wire fraud, securities fraud, commodities fraud, and campaign finance related violations as well.
Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators stole billions of dollars from FTX customers. He used that money for his personal benefit, including to make personal investments and to cover expenses and debts of his hedge fund, Alameda Research.
Bankman-Fried, arrested last night in the Bahamas, faces 8 criminal charges in the U.S. Authorities alleging he defrauded investors by funneling customers' money into his own hedge fund behind their backs. As a result, they say $8 billion have gone missing.
We heard from John J. Ray, this is the guy that's now the new CEO of FTX, revealing this stunning list of allegations against SBF.
This is the guy that oversaw the liquidation of Enron, and he's saying he's never seen anything like this.
Mr. Ray, you have compared FTX as worse than Enron.
Literally, there's no record keeping whatsoever. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack. They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
QuickBooks?
QuickBooks.
There's no voice of the people that's really been represented in this. I mean, people forget about the retail investors that have lost, in a lot of cases, their life savings.
What's up, guys? It's me, Tiff. And a few days ago, on December 27th, 2022, I spoke with Sam Bankman-Fried in person for the first time at his parents' home in Palo Alto, California. For those of you who have no idea who the fuck I am, this wasn't some random meeting. I've interviewed Sam twice in the past. I've visited him twice on house arrest so far. He seems like a relatively, sort of messy, chaotic person. There was, some clothes strewn out on the ground. It looks like he's dragged his blankets and a pillow into the library. It looks like he's been sleeping there, so he looks like he's been sort of chaotically typing up his recollection of events and sleeping in that room and probably waking up and just typing more and making more balance sheets. I didn't talk to his parents at all, but his dad kind of poked his head in the door. We were hanging out in his library mostly and just talking. A lot of news stories came out that were trying to paint the picture of me meeting Sam for some sexual rendezvous or something. I don't know, I think it's ridiculous, obviously, and frustrating, but I'm also I'm sure he's a lonely guy. I'm sure you don't mind a girl being hey, can I come over? He's just a lonely dude at his parents' house. Oh, Sam. We've actually talked quite a bit about his mental health and depression. I mean, he does use MSAM patches. I think they're antidepressant patches. He said that he's pretty much always been depressed, but he describes it more as anhedonia, or he feels anhedonic. He mostly says he doesn't feel happiness or too many positive emotions.
The world is messy. That's how it is. And it's sad that it's messy, and it can be really frustrating, I think, and slow things down, slow people down, and cause a lot of damage, but it's also an opportunity to try and make it better.
FTX was a good business. So I thought, why would Sam throw all this away? Answer might be that Sam just took incredible risks and he didn't really care at all about downside.
Sometimes people reply to my tweets and say it takes a scammer to know a scammer. And I think the irony there that is I don't think I'm a scammer, but at the same time, I understood what he was trying to do. I don't think he even had almost a conception at some point that it was wrong or right. I think he just had the mentality that he has to win.
I remember at one point when they were describing the 5 to 10 million trading error, they mentioned that it was it just wiped out their hit points, their HP. You know, in Pokemon or a video game, you have HP points, and if your Pokemon's HP points go to 0, they faint, and you have to wake up at the Pokemon hospital or something.
It in many ways is something that people might put on that pedestal that God would otherwise occupy.
There's an element that people should understand about the human condition.
Crypto is a story about the future of money, about people's willingness to adopt this, and people get excited about that story.
SBF. Sam Bankman-Fried.
Sam Bankman-Fried. You run one of the biggest, certainly the fastest growing crypto exchanges.
They can kind of begin to see that future, and they get a little nervous about, will I have a place in that future?
Sam Bankman-Fried, the king of crypto.
He's the most important man in crypto.
A lot of these guys suggest, like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You gotta get in now. You gotta get in on the ground floor. It's gotta happen.
He had a predatory model that was incredibly radical and dangerous.
FTX was asking for special treatment.
FTX might be heading into a bankruptcy process.
A liquidity shortfall of around $8 billion. I cannot imagine a scenario where $8 billion just disappears.
Crypto industry's been cut to ribbons this year.
Bankman-Fried's company had an estimated valuation of $40 billion.
One of the things about crypto is that it just seems to be doing a speed run of all the worst lessons of traditional finance.
Sam Bankman-Fried has been arrested in the Bahamas.
Is being held in jail. Sam Bankman-Fried will be extradited to the U.S. 8 criminal charges.
Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators stole billions of dollars from FTX customers.
Highly unlikely anyone would recover losses.
I was shocked by what happened this month. We messed up big.
I think this will go down as one of the largest financial crimes in history.
Bankman-Fried has pled not guilty.
It's $250 million bail bond.
A trial date has been set for October 2nd.
Sue, Mark.
Are you in?
I'm in.
I'm in. I'm in.
I'm in.
We're in.
After the financial crisis in 2008, there was a lot of mistrust in the financial system, and there was a lot of frustration by a lot of people.
It's going to be one of the watershed days in financial markets history.
$700 billion in bad loans.
Our country could experience a long and painful recession.
Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy.
There is no single action the federal government can take to end the financial market turmoil and the economic downturn.
Shame on you! Shame on you! What started in America last year has now spread to every part of the world.
The news from Wall Street has shaken the American people's faith in our economy.
The greed that banks had shown, the unchecked risk-taking that they had done, that basically put everyone in a lot of financial hurt. And Bitcoin was really born out of that.
So crypto, in a sense, starts with Bitcoin, which is like meant to be a form of cash, right? It's like the original idea of Bitcoin is it's like a substitute for cash.
There's a problem if you want to try to send money to somebody over the internet. It's digital. Digital is easily copied. So people had to figure out a way to send some kind of token of exchange that couldn't be easily stolen or double spent. The way this is done uses cryptography, the science of secret codes. And by creating that technology, you then were able to create this whole new world of assets called cryptocurrency.
There was a lot of interest in it at the time from people who valued privacy. They saw this as a way to exchange money peer-to-peer in a way that was sort of outside the government's control.
A Bitcoin is backed by nothing. It's just a Bitcoin. The only thing that makes it special is the fact that you and I and a community of people have agreed that maybe this token is worth something.
In that period, there was a roguish nature to cryptocurrencies. There was a movement of decentralization going on, this idea of stick it to the man and no regulations.
This was especially appealing for people who kind of wanted to be off-grid, were interested in unique technologies, and of course, people who wanted to make money.
Sam Bankman-Fried seemed like a very smart guy who came from traditional finance and kind of knew like the layout of like how finance works.
I remember when they told me about him for the first time. They had this glint in their eye and they sort of had this chuckle like, he's very, very smart, he's very capable, but he's very unique and he takes a lot of risks.
This is someone who was born and raised in Silicon Valley. This is someone whose parents worked at Stanford, very esteemed law professors, knew people. He grew up in a wealthy area, went to a ritzy high school. He was super well connected.
I ended up interning at Jane Street, a finance firm, after my junior year and really liked it there.
Jane Street is this super elite quantitative trading firm on Wall Street. It's super hard to even get an interview there, never mind a job. You have to be absolutely brilliant.
They are obsessed with risk. And in many ways, he fit the profile. Loved puzzles, loved math, straight out of MIT.
Finance is a good place to turn the ability to solve puzzles into a career, and often a very lucrative career. Crypto, you get to solve things that no one's thought about before. You're not as constrained by regulation or by having a boss who's been there for 20 years.
Sam left Jane Street and he started Alameda Research.
Alameda gets started in Berkeley in 2017. Sam has said that he wanted to give it kind of an innocuous name, especially because he was working in countries that might be suspicious of a crypto hedge fund.
A hedge fund takes money from its founders and partners and invests it in search of gains. The fund is like a ship on a voyage to Treasure Island, and investors are the passengers. But the sea is unpredictable, and there's a chance the ship might not reach the destination, or even sink. The hope for riches is what keeps everyone on board.
Sam's inner circle in Alameda were people from math camp, from MIT, and who he knew from Jane Street.
They were all these math whizzes from Massachusetts and California.
Sam started Alameda with a very small group of people. If you can just get enough capital together, you can do that.
So there are a couple of key players to know. First one, and one of the most important, was Gary Wang, roommate from MIT. Gary was the chief technology officer, the tech and engineering guy, an extremely gifted programmer. Nishad was head of engineering, so he was the other key piece to the tech side, along with Gary. Then you have Sam Trabucco.
We're a cryptocurrency trading firm, meaning that we're sort of doing the same sort of things you do in traditional finance, but we're doing it in like the Bitcoin and like similar products.
He was the co-head of Alameda with Caroline Ellison.
Caroline and Sam met when they were working at Jane Street.
Caroline Ellison was co-CEO of Alameda Research, and she was winning math competitions.
I talked to Sam, who had just started Alameda, And he convinced me that it was an exciting opportunity, so I decided to take a chance on it.
He started Alameda with money from friends and family and just started doing crypto trades and turning a profit that way.
They found a way to buy crypto in the United States, sell it in Japan, and take advantage of that difference. This price difference was sitting there, but it was not necessarily easy to take advantage of. And the legend of Alameda was that they figured out a way to do that.
Founded in Berkeley, California, and then quickly decided to set up shop in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong at the time, the crypto scene was, pretty interesting. There were a lot of pro-crypto people there.
I moved to Hong Kong in 2014, and it's where I started my career in venture capital.
Venture capitalists invest in new businesses. It's like giving a kid with a great lemonade recipe the money to buy a bigger stand and more supplies. It's a gamble, but if the lemonade stand becomes a hit, your small investment could turn into a big return.
During their time in Hong Kong, Sam was able to connect with multiple investors, and I think was when everything just really took off.
We were looking into Alameda opportunity and investing in Sam. Sam was an incredible figure. He's the kind of guy you want to back. Like, he's very unique, he's one of one. And the trading strategies that Sam was doing were very smart. Some of them were a little riskier than others, but the reason that it was risky was because Sam was always on the cutting edge. And that was exciting to us. If you're taking technology risk, we love that. I'm a technology investor. That's what it's all about.
We talked with some VC firms, and our pitch was basically, hey guys, good news. Bunch of 25-year-olds. We don't really know what a Bitcoin is, but we're trading it. Also, this is all crypto. We got a startup together. None of us has run a company before, and we'd like $100 million by next Tuesday, ideally.
It was one of the craziest diligence processes I've ever been through. We kept uncovering more and more weird things that dragged us deeper and deeper. One week, he sent us his latest data, and he was down meaningfully. We were a little freaked out. We asked him what happened, and he responds, "Oh, I can't remember if I told you, but me and most of the senior members of the team, we actually had this idea for a crypto exchange. So that's why we've been losing money, because I've had my eye off the ball. I just think it's a calculated risk. It's worth it for me to lose money here and not spend time on it, because this exchange thing could be so big." And actually, I kind of like this answer. I've invested in many of the largest exchanges in crypto around the world. We can help you build an exchange. And he responds, "Oh, I think you maybe misunderstood me. This exchange we're working on is separate from Alameda Research." So I asked him, is it different people working on this exchange? Are you using separate intellectual property, separate IP, separate resources?
Alameda is buying and selling. It's trading for its own book and, trying to do profitable trades. FTX, you can think of it as infrastructure. It's markets infrastructure, so everything that sits between a buyer and a seller. So FTX doesn't buy and sell itself, but it's a venue where people can go to trade crypto.
FTX is a public-facing exchange. It's a place where other people come to place trades.
A lot of crypto is people who don't like banks and who want to take intermediaries out of the financial system. And their goal is to be able to send Bitcoin to buy stuff without anyone else being involved. You just hold your money and you can send it without anyone's permission. That's like a big philosophical part of crypto. But not having any intermediaries, it's kind of hard. You have to download a lot of weird software and set up wallets and think about passcodes and all this stuff that is somewhat mentally taxing. And if you just want to buy a thing that'll go up, there are crypto exchanges that have nice websites where you can go and buy the thing without worrying about a lot of the apparatus of crypto.
FTX is a crypto exchange being built inside Alameda. You had two companies coming, I guess, from the same root.
He wanted to take money from us into Alameda Research, and he wanted to use that money to finance and help start a separate business that we would have no information about, no ownership in, and it was actually hurting our interest in Alameda. And I remember at the end, I tried one last-ditch effort to explain to Sam why we couldn't just negotiate a separate deal for FTX. He was just looking at me very sort of wide-eyed. He didn't care, really, about the moral implications of what he was proposing. It was almost like trying to explain like business ethics 101 to a baby. And I realized we were so far apart that it was just too much. We couldn't possibly do a deal with this guy.
They launched FTX about 18 months after they launched Alameda. We knew from our own experience launching an exchange that the speed at which they were operating was almost impossible for the size of team that they had.
So I think a lot of cryptocurrency companies actually are very proud that they run on these incredibly small teams in general.
Is this completely a facade? Is there anything happening behind the scenes? You know, at the time, FTX was like 20 people. Kraken had 100 people on the security team alone.
Sam starts FTX in 2019, and this is when he really explodes outside of crypto's radar.
People talk about SBF as being like unconventional in some way.
The kind of like crazy, you know, gigantic mop of curly hair, the like t-shirts that are like half fitting him, the cargo shorts, the fact that he looks like he hasn't showered for a couple of days. And, you know, a normal financier looks at that and says, oh man, that seems like a red flag. But like in the mind of a venture capitalist, right, that is proof that he's so smart he doesn't care. It's like the equivalent of like on Wall Street, like having a really well-tailored suit.
I've been working with programmers since 1988. They were all Sam Bankman-Fried. They wore the same clothes he wears. They were in flip-flops of Lamborghinis. I've seen this movie before 1,000 times.
Just so many people in crypto come off as like crazy or really promotional, like hype man. Like they sound like they're trying to sell like a new vacuum cleaner door to door or something. At this Bitcoin conferences, people literally like screaming on the stage, like, Bitcoin's going to the moon, yeah, like, Bitcoin's gonna save the world.
And let me tell you that we are really changing the world as we know it. Be connected! Wow!
The conference ended with a guy giving a speech about how Bitcoin would save El Salvador, literally bawling.
We die on this hill. I will fucking die on this fucking hill. So today, a country plugs in into open monetary system and gives their citizens hope.
So So in that world, Sam actually seemed pretty reasonable.
So I thought we should build the first Alexandria here in El Salvador, Bitcoin City. And the volcano will power the whole city and will also power the mining.
And so when you compare kind of that stereotype to how Sam presented, which was definitely eccentric, but the things he was saying were really thoughtful and seemed thoughtful.
He also just had this great persona. He had a way of seeming very honest, guileless. Like he seemed like he was not trying to fool anybody.
There was a tremendous amount of trust placed in Sam. He positioned himself as a guy who was trying to do crypto the right way.
When he was a teenager, he had decided that he really wanted to dedicate his life to doing what was best for the world. He considered different things, like he tried being an animal rights activist. He considered like politics, but then he decided that really the best way would be to get really, really rich and then give that money away.
What we need is an ethical revolution so that we can work out how do we use this tremendous bounty of resources to improve the world. For the last 10 years, my colleagues and I have developed a philosophy and research program that we call effective altruism.
It's always been, in theory, a goal of mine to figure out how I can have positive impact on the world. And I got involved in the EA community in college, and it's been a really big part of how I've decided what to do with my life.
And so effective altruism becomes this, like, essentially a community of people that mostly develops online. It's very young, and it's about giving as much money as possible in the most effective way as possible.
The effective altruists, like at first, they're like, all right, we've studied it and we've come to an answer. We must buy bed nets for everyone in Africa so they don't get malaria. And so these guys would go work on Wall Street, make some money, and give it to this bed net charity. Their philosophy is utilitarian, and that means like what's gonna do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. It sounds unobjectionable on the surface, but as time went on, their ideas got like weirder and weirder and more science fiction-y.
They say we have to worry about the long-term survival of humanity. And as a result, like, they started worrying about apocalypses.
They're like, all right, let's say there's something that could wipe out all of humanity, like killer robots. That would be very, very bad. So if we could do something that would prevent it, that would be very, very good. In fact, better than giving out bed nets.
It gets to, like, we need to stop AI from killing us. We need to stop the next pandemic. And that's the kind of effective altruism that Sam Bankman-Fried believes.
AI is going to get more powerful, and it has the power to change the world for better or for worse. And it's going to happen. We're not going to not build AI. And that we are having the hard conversations about what role it should be playing.
And this can be like kind of a dangerous way of thinking. Like it's almost like you're the hero of your own sci-fi movie. Like you're not definitely gonna save the world, but like maybe you are.
Like when you just take a few steps away from it, you just see how kind of morally twisted it is. Because the idea essentially is it's better to go into finance than it is to become a doctor or a teacher. It's morally superior. And That it's basically a philosophy designed to flatter the sensibilities of tech bros and finance bros, where now, like, you don't have to feel bad about being in finance instead of like actually helping people in your day-to-day life.
If we succeed, we're gonna save the world, maybe. It's like, should I worry about like securities laws? Maybe not. Like, in fact, that might be bad. Like, if you don't save the world because you were too worried about what the Securities and Exchange Commission might think, like, maybe that makes you a bad person.
It's a worldview that essentially justifies almost any behavior today, that justifies insane accumulation of wealth while not necessarily like paying your fair share to society.
Have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19.
The number of cases soaring just today, more than 24,000 now nationwide.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Are you going to recommend to the governor that New York City do shelter in place?
It has to be considered starting today.
Right about now, for many, it means working from home. That is the new normal.
You must stay at home.
2020 was just a weird time in so many ways. Most people just didn't have an outlet like for entertainment or community. They weren't spending money on the things that they normally spent money on. So a lot of people just gravitated toward cryptocurrency trading.
Like in 2020, crypto was just getting like much bigger. People were investing real money. Big institutions were talking about getting involved.
It was definitely not your kind of Wall Street hedge funds that were doing this stuff in 2020. It was very much retail driven. Many ex-poker players started trading crypto around then.
I think that we've been looking at the Bahamas for a while. They're one of the first countries to roll out any comprehensive regulation for cryptocurrencies, which we think is extremely important for the space and a really positive sign.
The reason FTX was in Hong Kong and then the Bahamas is because all the stuff they were doing would have been illegal in the US. Like, that's why these crypto exchanges are offshore. And the Bahamas was like, hey, crypto guys, please come here. We'll let you do whatever you want. He created this like image that he did not care about money. He really liked to play up his monk-like lifestyle. Like, I drive a Toyota, I sleep on a beanbag.
Hold on, where's your car?
It's that one there.
That's like what, a Toyota?
Yeah, it's a Corolla.
And this place where he lived just did not fit with that because he's living in a penthouse at like the nicest resort in the Bahamas.
Nine colleagues and I bought a large apartment together near our office that we live in. And I'm sort of really fortunate to be able to have a really comfortable life and not have to worry ever about, money for myself. But I'm not particularly excited to dive into luxury. I'm not excited about yachts. And I both think it's not what I should do with my money. I think I should be thinking about how I can help the world with it. It also just isn't who I am.
He didn't buy a Lamborghini, but like he did fly in private jets. He had this fancy penthouse. They paid $30 million for it. It's in one of like 8 buildings that are in kind of a horseshoe shape around this super yacht marina.
I grew up in the Bahamas, spent the first 18 years of my life here. The Albany Club is a gated, exclusive residential community that also includes a hotel and a heavy nightlife scene. It's a place where the likes of Tiger Woods have residences, Justin Bieber.
I went to Albany, and as soon as I got there, I felt like I was on this like luxurious like alien planet. Like the grass was super green, the air somehow smelled better than the rest of the island. It was super quiet. Everybody was very fit. Coffee costs like $9. There's a sign on the wall at the coffee shop that's like, do not take pictures of celebrities at this coffee shop. Not a place that Sam would have fit in, but I think he could have justified it to himself by saying like, I'm gonna give away so much money in the future that this amount of spending is just not important. Maybe you've given away 50, 100 million, that you've gotten 50 or 100 million worth of PR out of it. How do I know you're not just doing it for show?
So all these people who were working at FTX and at Alameda, they lived in this penthouse, so their entire lives in the Bahamas were intertwined.
They had office parties all the time. They were wild. They could last, well into the morning, and they were frequent.
The vibe, as it seems, was a lot more a quasi like fraternity or sorority type of atmosphere. And they dated each other. Sam and Caroline Ellison were on-again, off-again relationship. Caroline Ellison was one of the executives that lived down in the Bahamas. So I kind of got interested in this idea that if Alameda has information about what customers on FTX are doing, they can place trades that have an advantage.
It was kind of viewed as like sketchy because it's a big conflict of interest. Like he owns the exchange and he's got a big fund that trades on the exchange. Do you want to play online poker against the guy who owns the website? Like he could probably like cheat and look at everybody's cards.
How do they make sure that someone's not just like peeking over someone's shoulder at the beach on a laptop? Very few people want to go on the record saying anything bad about Sam or about FTX because Sam was just too important in the crypto community.
When you combine effective altruism, long-termism, and this approach to life that I think Sam had that probably goes beyond money, which is like this gaming idea where you're just trying to like rack up as much points as possible. You start in a place that feels ethical and like morally sound, and you get to a place where you don't even really have to worry that much about what's happening in the now. It's just all about making this thing as big as it possibly can be.
FTX's strategy was basically like, get out in front of everybody, as many people as possible, whatever it takes. Sports sponsorships were a big part of that.
Second down, Hastings.
actually really elite. Hey, it's Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm excited to be partnering with FTX.
I'm Naomi Osaka, and I'm proud to partner with FTX.
That's my man!
Sue, Mark.
Are you in? I'm in.
I'm in. I'm here. Oh, I'm in, bro.
I'm all in. Are you?
Of course I'm in. Why you gotta ask?
Trading crypto with FTX? I'm in.
Is this about the new FTX arena?
We're in.
Our city, our team, FTX. You in, Miami?
FTX obviously like got the naming rights to an arena. They got these like patches on the umpires' uniforms in like Major League Baseball. There was a time when FTX was just everywhere out of the blue.
FTX is dope.
And they got spokespeople like Tom Brady and Giselle.
Yeah, trade. We're telling everyone.
Not a trade, I'm trading crypto. FTX is the safest and easiest way to buy and sell crypto.
I gotta ask you about working with Tom Brady and Giselle Bundchen.
One of the user sets of people in the world who have absolutely massive reach and respect.
It's hard to go against Tom Brady or Steph Curry or Lewis Hamilton, or people think what they're fed, essentially. If you have Tom Brady talking about FTX, fuck yeah, I'm gonna trust FTX.
I feel very comfortable endorsing this product for what it provides as a service and how it can help someone like me and thousands of other players.
By the way, this is like all over the world too. So we're not just talking like sports leagues in the US, we're talking like Formula One and, billboards and ad campaigns in all kinds of different locations as well around the world.
FTX did this ad campaign with Steph Curry. And I remember watching that Steph Curry one and just feeling like very uncomfortable.
This is Steph Curry, the world's leading expert on cryptocurrency.
I'm not.
Because the premise of that ad was that you didn't need to be a crypto expert to basically invest on FTX. Steph Curry sort of repeatedly says, I don't know anything about crypto. I don't know anything about crypto, which I'm sure is true. But then at the end of the ad, he says, and I don't have to know anything about crypto because I have this.
I'm not an expert, and I don't need to be. With FTX, I have everything I need to buy, sell, and trade crypto safely.
Now, and look, I cover business and finance, and like I know that it is not safe. You're talking about an incredibly risky asset class.
In looking at the height of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried's power, you can look at the 2022 Super Bowl.
That was kind of like the moment, I'd say, when like crypto really got on people's radars, right? There was, Matt Damon did these like crazy crypto.com ads, and there were a bunch of other advertisers, and FTX was one of the big ones.
I call it the wheel.
I don't think so. What does it do?
The rules.
Yeah, so does a bagel, okay? A bagel you can eat.
The whole idea of the Super Bowl ad with Larry David was like, throughout history, there have been haters, basically, people who don't see what the future is going to hold.
Edison, can I be honest with you? It stinks.
Like I was saying, it's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never.
There was a question, like, where is all this money coming from?
Sam and FTX were growing incredibly quickly, but Sam's star was growing even quicker than the exchange. For whatever reason, he decided to make himself the poster boy. It's not like the CEO of Netflix is in all the Netflix commercials, right?
No one really thinks about the founders of most of the businesses that most people use every day. Any US bank, ask the average consumer who banks with that bank, if they know the founder or the CEO, they won't say, oh yeah, I've seen all of his TikToks and YouTube videos.
But Sam is front and center everywhere, and I had a conference in Miami, and the hotel I was staying at was across from FTX Stadium.
When I went to San Francisco in July, it was there was Sam and Giselle staring down at me from all these mega ads for FTX.
And I see at the bus stop Sam's face. Oh my God, is this gonna be my life now? The biggest blemish in my entire investing career is following me around nonstop.
In the press, they processed it as a really exciting story, a success story, one that provided, I'd say, hope, to the left. And even if you didn't agree with his politics, he was a really interesting kind of new sort of philanthropist, and that was exciting to a lot of people.
I think the media did have a bit of a love fest with him. He knew how to be flattering. He also was just extremely available.
I think the media is definitely complicit in his rise. He said that he was aware of the fact that most people in his position would have journalists and reporters talk to their publicist first, but he made sure to always keep an open line of communication with journalists.
I'll spend time, talking with the press. I'll spend time, on interviews. I'll spend time on Twitter. I spend probably an hour or two a day on Twitter.
People wonder, what was his secret to getting such good press? He loved to answer questions. He loved to talk to reporters. He would answer anything you asked.
Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. It's a good question. And frankly, it's a good question. Okay, that's a really good question.
He wouldn't give you some canned response. That seeming openness made him seem like a good person to write about.
There was a kind of a fluff piece written by Sequoia.
Sequoia is a huge name in Silicon Valley. This is one of the best in terms of venture capital investors. And they had made a huge $200 million bet on FTX.
The guy who wrote the article just clearly was very taken by Sam. He went over the top with it. He was like, as I was sitting there with Bankman-Fried, I could tell I was sitting with a future trillionaire.
One of the things that they mention is that he was playing video games the whole time he was on this call with them. And they were all so excited about that. They were like, wow, he's multitasking. He's focused on League of Legends while he talks to us. He's a genius.
People love a wunderkind, especially in the US context. If you were to design a wunderkind in a laboratory, you would probably end up with someone like him.
He had just sort of the cool factor that people in Silicon Valley were looking for. It's like Mark Zuckerberg with his hoodies.
I talked to an FTX employee who asked Sam, why don't you get a haircut? And he said, I don't think it would be a good idea financially for me to get a haircut.
He was among the richest people in the world. He was not only one of the richest people in the world, he was a young, rich person.
He seemed so important to know and understand. And there was, I think, probably a fear of missing out on a profile of him when he seemed like such an important kind of guy, like such a linchpin in this industry.
SBF's reputation among those of us who work in crypto and are very active in crypto was not as positive as he was portrayed in the mainstream media. He was perceived more as someone who was quite mercenary and a bit of an opportunist. I heard stories already in 2020 about how he kind of mistreated counterparties that were in a weaker position. So I think many of us in crypto had a bit more of a hesitation when it came to the sort of king status that he was getting. I think many of us feel like perhaps we should have spoken up. But at the same time, it's difficult when you have someone who gets that popular and that powerful so quickly. And if you do speak up, you might not have all the evidence because a lot of this is rumor-based. And so you take a big risk if you do speak up.